Hello. If you haven't figured out who I am by now, it's not surprising. Anyway, this is just the beginning of a thing that I'm wanna try to do, where I talk to a lot of people who are much older than I in terms of doing Mugen related things, and maybe people who are exactly where I am. I've been doing this for about 9 years now, and it's been a very long road, to say the least, from my first character to apparently the 103 that I've done now. Besides just me talking about some of the things I've seen and experienced, I figured, what if I asked these guys about their first character and the things they remember from way back then, like spanning way past where I started in 2006, just to have some retrospection and to see if some of the pitfalls that we all deal with now actually applied to them back then. And it's going to be a series of questions that I want them to answer honestly. It's like this isn't really a serious thing. It's just more of a fun thing to channel the ancients, if you will. I already have a few people confirmed to do this. In the coming months, we'll have them talk to me about some of the things that they've dealt and seen. But I'm going to get the ball rolling, and I'm going to answer my own questions. Hopefully not come off any more egotistical than I already am. I'll leave the questions as titles on the screen, so that way I don't have to sound stupid asking myself them. And I'm going to answer them in that order. Alright. So, it was roughly early 2006. That was the first time I saw M.U.G.E.N, because about 4 years before that, I do remember doing stuff with DOS M.U.G.E.N, but it was only like stuff that I've seen and downloaded because they were like, hey, this is Dragon Ball Z versus Marvel, and it was terrible, like most compilations today that they try to put out. That's not surprising. But anyway, it was a few years after that, I got my hands on it again, and I said, what would be really cool is if I was actually able to make something myself. I've downloaded all these characters. Some are good, some are bad, but I wanna give it a try because I think I might want to do programming related stuff. This was right before I made the pivotal decision to decide what I wanted to do with the rest of my life, and the fact that it's already my career now says some things. I eventually downloaded Fighter Factory, like the one of the very first ones. I got some sprites from, I believe, Mugen Fighters Guild, actually. I went through their resource thread and found some things to work with. I tried to get the hang of it, played around with Kung Fu Man, and started swapping the sprites around and try to make the attacks that the sprites that I downloaded had, and go from there. A lot of people don't really know about the first thing I made. It was not Gohan. It was something that was never released and does not exist anymore. And it still counts to me because, like, it was my learning experience. It was going to be Rolento. I changed the skin color a little because I was 15 and not that bright. So I was like, how do I make this character appeal to me? Well, I have to make him look like me, and all of my knowledge at the time. And I think the first thing I was trying to understand was just how to apply palettes and indexing sprites in general. I had never heard of any of this at the moment. I didn't have Photoshop. That's actually what made me go out and get it for the first time. I think it was like Photoshop 6.0 or something like that. It wasn't that hard to find it. It was 2006. I mean, it wasn't the dark ages or anything. Anybody can go out and find these things. I got that. I opened it up, and I started trying to find some tutorials on how to do that. Because when I would just go to index the sprite, I'm like, well, how come my color isn't transparent like the other one? And I opened up Kung Fu Man, and I'm like, oh, his is like the very last one. There was a lot of stuff that you could piece together, so I'm not going to go into too much detail about my process of my first thing that I did. Either way, a few weeks after that, I felt competent enough to actually do something outside of playing around with it, and I made the decision to relive one of my childhood games that I played. It was Dragon Ball Z Super Tendon 3. And I remember using Gohan on it, and I'm like, I bet I can make that Gohan, or even make it better because I'm better than they were back then. This is where the ego starts. I was putting these things together, and Like I remember getting Paint Shop Pro and stuff too because I saw some tutorials. I think that Phantom of the Server put out at the time talking about how to make effects look better, and I didn't even really. I was too afraid to even try that back then because I was just trying to make my character actually work. It was really weird. There were so many things that I expected to just snap in place and just work on its own that I really couldn't figure it out. Like just trying to make a projectile work took me like a day because I didn't really understand what the hell I was doing. That's, when you're starting out, it's not surprising that that's what happens. I eventually found the sprites. I believe it was from, I can't remember his name right now, but he had a sprite repository up with superintendent sprites, and he's still around now. If I can remember who he is, I'll like have it put on the screen with the subtitles because I know I can find it later. But I got to go off in there. It was a sprite sheet, which at the time I thought, well, made sense because if you're going to index all the sprites and you have them in one place, why wouldn't you do that? It just makes sense, right? I got those, started cutting them out after they were indexed or whatever, after I finally figured out how transparency works. And I started dropping them in one by one. Give it a couple months after that, I got projectiles and stuff going, and I was like, what would be great? A super. And that's when I first started playing around with all of that. And it was like, I was having a blast. I was like, this is really cool. This is going to be great. At no point did I ever just think about how awful this character is. I mean, it was my first. Of course, I'm not going to think it's terrible at the time. So, the gameplay. Oh boy, that was a doozy. I think that it was just a bunch of stuff that I threw together. I was just playing around with triggers and everything else because I didn't really know what they would do or even try to figure out what they were going to do. But, I had I think everything on that character is an infinite because it changes into itself. And I said, the first thing I'm going to do is fix that problem by making a button that ends a combo. So you can go X, Y, X, Y, X, Y, and then hit Z, and you do this little combo ender punch. It looked even worse. A lot of the effects that I had were just stuff that I found and downloaded and said, hey, this looks cool. I'm going to put it in this character. You could probably tell, although this character is not exactly online right now because I can't find him, and I don't really want to put him back up. I mean, I'm not ashamed of it, but I'm ashamed of it. Nobody wants the world to see their first drawing when they're a professional artist. It's just a very bad comparison, but, it's close enough. The biggest challenge of the whole thing was honestly trying to make his beam supers look cool. Like, I think one of them takes forever to even fucking happen. But it was like the first time I even tried to come up with the idea of a helper. And even that was like months down the line. The first time I released Gohan was roughly, I believe it was September of 2006. And I started on him in June. So it was a 3-month process of me just coming home from school every day, tinkering around with this character, trying to figure out how to make him do things like the game that I used to play. I remember trying to put in that air kick thing. I believe it's called 1000 kicks or something like that. I never really knew the proper name of it. That's just what I called it at the time. And I was so happy about that. And the damage on it was absurd. But at the time, I didn't notice because it was my first character. Again, you're never going to pay much attention to balancing when you don't know what you're really doing. Because even as a person back then, I played fighting games, but I was not proficient at them. I didn't understand why they were the way they were and why it's important to do things the way they did. I just was like, this is cool, this is fun. I bet I could do something like that, and it'd be pretty cool and fun too. I just went for it. And I eventually did ended up getting all the beam supers in, as I know they're there anyway. But there was this thing called player push that I didn't know what it was, and because of that, whenever the beam hit you, the beam like pushed itself away. And it looked kind of silly. I'm not sure what exactly I did to remedy that, or if I remedied it at all. I would have to literally open it up and check, and I'm not doing that. I would say the main thing that I would have done different, if anything, would probably have been to not start with that character. Like, going back then, it was not that I thought about doing something different because, Sandrock came later, and that's a whole other debacle, and that's why I'm only talking about the first one. Everybody has a rocky, rough start at first, and I'm not even close to an exception. Anyway, I would have maybe did a little more research on how some of the things work because a lot of his helper based projectiles aren't done properly. So if you hit them the wrong way, I'm pretty sure they cause cloning. Things that you have to acknowledge on your first character. It's never going to be perfect. And I didn't really reach out for help at the time because I was like, I'm going to figure this out on my own. I was hard headed and stubborn, and not much of that has changed today. But, back when I was at M.U.G.E.N Infantry, the help that I did ask for was very minimal. And the people that I met and even learned from did not come around until like my third or fourth character at least. Like, I'm not going to get into any of that right now. I think what I liked the most about him back then was just how fun it was to press buttons and see something you made do all these cool things. And it wasn't that it was a sprite swap or anything. No, I literally put all that in there. Warranted Fighter Factory had this S controls where you just click on them and they appear. But you have to have a proficient understanding of at least what they do, kinda. You see all your work paying off. You see your supers going in. They probably gave power back, but you didn't notice because you're like, hey, look what I did with this character. Yo, this is cool. I'm 16 now, so I'm a little more understanding of what I'm doing. So I'm so happy about this character. It's really cool, etc. Not much of that has changed now. It's just now instead of me being overexcited about it, it's me just being like, you damn right it's good. I've been doing this for a long time. Whatever. Oh man, the community was huge different between now and back then. I'm not sure how much of that is actually for the better either way. As you know, back then, that was before the blacklist was removed, where there was this huge list of authors that were all confirmed to have borrowed code from someone else and try to make it off as their own without giving credit. People still do that now, but a lot of people have laxed up on it because if they did just take code from all these other people, that doesn't mean the character's going to be any good. And in most cases, it isn't altogether. And I guess now they just say, well, it takes care of itself because it's just going to be mocked and made fun of and no real repercussion is going to be done. And I'm still on the fence about that whole thing. I shouldn't be. I really shouldn't be. But I kind of am. I mean, the first time someone took anything of mine and used it, I think it was like Super Copycat or whatever. I'm not even going to lie. I was pissed about it because I'm like, how dare you take something that I worked so hard on and just throw it in your character expecting it to work. I was like 17 at the time, so even then I was still a bit naive. Even now, I'd be a little bit bummed out about it at the very least. But now I understand that people would do it because they either A, want to do something that I did that they just could not understand or wrap their heads around, so they just took it, or B, they want to pay homage to what I've done and say I want to put this in my character too because that was pretty cool that you did that. Both of those are very egotistical answers, but I mean, I wouldn't be who I am if I didn't come off that way, I guess. I didn't start asking for help until second, third-ish character. I mean, there was a few people that I was still asking about it. I added a few people on MSN, like I believe the Alchemist, Aztec, Moldred came later. A couple years after that, that's when I started meeting the other people who I honestly still talk to now, or don't talk to anymore for one reason or another. But the help that I did get was very important, and I'm glad that it was there. It kind of made a huge difference. Well, not really, but I'm not as stupid as I was because of the help. I can say that. If you are starting today, if you literally just download M.U.G.E.N and say, I want to make a character today, the first thing that I would recommend is that your expectation of what you want and what you think is good be your guiding line. Because don't think that the first thing you do is going to be gold. It more than likely won't. It has happened, don't get me wrong, but it's only when people have put in so much research and they already have a pivotal understanding of what goes on in M.U.G.E.N and how to use it that the first thing they make is just gold. And I think a lot of people today understand that. So it's not like I'm just shouting at the wind. Like they're a common sense kind of deal, but at the same time, you just don't know. If you're ever going to listen to me, which is unlikely, just know that for anybody who says that your shit is awful and you don't know what you're doing and you should quit. I had that too. But the difference is I took that as a sign to improve rather than getting upset about it. I mean, don't get me wrong, I was pissed, but I never showed it publicly because a part of me always was like, what if they are right? What if they have a point? Who am I to deem what's good and what isn't? I mean, I like what I do, and I should, but that doesn't mean it's good. That's pretty much all it's really about to me. I would say that even now, that, compared to the characters we used to get back then, that today is a lot better overall in terms of people coming out with the first characters. The quality of characters has definitely gone up over the years, and if it should have been. I'm glad that it has, even because it would be pretty weird if we were still stuck in 2007 in terms of quality control in 2006. There was some good stuff out there, but with the data that we have now, it blows everything out of the water. The stuff that we're able to do today, like, we've come so far, and I haven't even, like, Mugen's been around since 1999, and I didn't come on the scene until 7 years later. So that's why I wanted to talk to people even older than I was to see how much different it was for them, because I can only imagine what it was like when Test P was the main thing, and Mugen Dev was the main thing that people went to, because I didn't know about them. They were either defunct or not that visited by the time I came on the scene. And that's what this thing is going to be all about. And I can't wait to talk to the confirmed guests that I have coming, and hopefully you guys will listen and enjoy it too.